The NBA playoffs are almost set for 2024, and so I did the only thing I know how to do, and that's tie it into college football somehow. The question I asked is, what if I took the last 82 results, which is the length of an NBA season, and seeded the college football teams in a Western and Eastern conference to see what the college football NBA playoffs would look like? And this is what it looks like in the Western Conference. The West with the Oklahoma Sooners at 63-19. Now, splitting between the East and West, I just split right down the Mississippi River. So everyone west of the Mississippi River is here in the Western Conference. Oklahoma, the top dogs at 63-19. Oregon at 60-22, just a couple games back. Boise State and Fresno State, a couple group of 5 teams easily making the playoff. Washington, Iowa, a couple consistent Western teams. And then there's Oklahoma State just making the cut there. They're going to be in the play-in. Texas at 8 in the play-in, Utah at 9, Air Force the last team in to that play-in that the NBA is doing now, and some other teams that I just wanted to make it a clean 15, just like the NBA standings. You've got SMU, BYU, Texas A&M, San Diego State, and then USC barely making the cut with the same record as the Aggies and the Aztecs. This is what the college football NBA Western Conference standings would look like. And this takes us to the Eastern Conference standings. In the East, a lot stronger. We've got Alabama beating the Golden State Warriors record with a 74-8 record over the last couple seasons, last 82 games. Georgia just a game behind at number 2. That game in the SEC title game, obviously a huge swing for this from 2023. Ohio State, Clemson, a couple usual suspects. Notre Dame in at 5 over Michigan. Michigan, who is the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference, would have been the 1 seed in the Western Conference. That's how much things are skewed the other way. Our first group of 5 appearance is App State at 7, who's actually the lone group of 5 team to make the playoffs in this side. You've got LSU, Cincinnati, Penn State, and UCF, who just loses out on the tiebreaker, which was head-to-head results in the past versus Penn State and Cincinnati. They just miss. And then rounding it out, some other teams that were pretty successful: Louisiana, Memphis, Troy, and Wisconsin. So some teams that I think are to be expected to be on here, but the gap, 21 games from Wisconsin to Alabama, that's opposed to an only 13-game gap from top to bottom in the West. So the East, clearly the more powerful conference in this bracket. So let's take a look at the playoff picture now, the Western and Eastern playoff pictures there. As I talked about before, the cutoff for the play-in is right after the 6 seeds. So Michigan and Fresno State, those teams that just make the cut to be in the playoffs. The play-in in the West involves Oklahoma State, Texas, Utah, Air Force, and in the East, it's App State, LSU, Cincinnati, Penn State. And so to figure out the results in this tournament, as you see the matchups, Oklahoma State versus Texas, Utah versus Air Force, App State, LSU, and Cincinnati versus Penn State, I decided we're already using so much historical data to make these records. Why don't we use historical data to pick these matchups, the last times that these guys played each other? And when we're talking in terms of a best of 7 series, that's really the best metric we have, is what happened the last 7 times these guys played each other. So we'll use that accordingly. So getting to the results, we have the 7-8 matchup, Oklahoma State versus Texas. We only need the most recent result because the play-in is 1 game, and it was Texas beating Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship. This is unfortunate for Oklahoma State. If we were going back 7 games, they would win the series in 7. They've had Texas's number recently, but instead, the Longhorns get the 7 seed. You've got Utah versus Air Force also in the West. These teams played a lot back in their WAC and Mountain West days, and it was Utah who beat Air Force the last time they played in 2010, a year before the Utes went to the Pac-12, 28-23. So Utah is able to advance, and they will play for the 8 seed versus Oklahoma State. Then we have App State versus LSU, a matchup where LSU and App State have only played twice, and LSU's won both. That was in 2005 and 2008. Both were App State as an FCS program. And so that advances LSU. They will be the 7 seed in the East. And then Cincinnati versus Penn State is the last matchup. They last played in 2005, where Penn State had a convincing victory, eliminating Cincinnati, and Penn State will play versus App State for the 8 seed. So our final play-in games are App State versus Penn State and Oklahoma State versus Utah for the 8 seeds in each conference. Utah and Oklahoma State have only ever played one time, although they're expected to transform into Big 12 rivals. It was a game in Salt Lake, and Oklahoma State won it 46-6. And then we have Penn State versus App State, who have also only played one time. It was that overtime thriller where Penn State just squeaked it out. So that sets up the East. Seeds 1 through 8, Bama, Penn State, Clemson, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, LSU, and it also sets up the West with Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Washington, Iowa, Boise State, Fresno State, Oregon, Texas. Rivalry games littered throughout the opening rounds in this conference. And without further ado, let's get to figuring out who wins these series based on the last couple times each of these teams have played. So in the first round of the East, it's Alabama versus Penn State. The last time they played was in 2011 in State College, where Alabama won. Before that, Bama won in 2010. Penn State wins in 1990 to make this series 2-1, but the previous two both went to the Tide. The Tide winning this series 4-1. It's a gentleman's sweep. Clemson versus Notre Dame, a couple recent matchups really spicing this one up. Clemson with the win in 2023, Notre Dame with the win in 2022. Each team getting a win in 2020. The series tied at 2-2, and Clemson puts together a couple wins in 2018 in the Cotton Bowl and 2015 at Clemson to win this series 4-2, bouncing the Irish, who are a dangerous threat as a historically good team in this tournament. Ohio State, Michigan is the crazy one, where despite the fact that Michigan's won each of the previous 3 seasons, there was an uninterrupted Ohio State streak right before that, meaning the Buckeyes rip off 4 straight wins, Michigan blows a 3-0 lead, and Ohio State wins this series in 7. Final series is Georgia versus LSU, and due to divisional structure and the fact that these guys don't play very much, despite Georgia being dominant in this recent run, they only played them in 2022 to get that win. The previous 2 times were 2019 and 2018, so LSU takes the lead 2-1. Georgia gets the win in 2013 in Athens, but the previous 2 matchups, both in Athens, go to LSU, meaning the Tigers win this series 4-2 and eliminate the Georgia Bulldogs in an upset in the opening round. To the Western Conference opening round we go. With the first one, it's Bedlam. Oklahoma State versus Oklahoma. All-time Oklahoma dominates the series, but 2 recent wins for Oklahoma State in 2023 and 2021. They've got a 2-1 series lead, but Oklahoma has the win in 2019, 2018, and 2020, so they win this series 4-2 over Oklahoma State, keeping them as their little brother. Washington versus Iowa. It's going to be a Big Ten matchup. They're actually tied 3-3 in the all-time series. However, the game this year in Iowa, I think the Hawkeyes are going to win that rubber match, so I'm just going to bank on that and say Iowa wins this series in 7. 4-3. We've got Boise State, Fresno State. Fresno State's won the last 2 years. That gives them a 2-0 series lead. Give Boise State the wins in 2022 and 2021. The series is tied at 2-2. A win in the Mountain West Championship game for Fresno State in 2018 gives them the lead 3-2, but back-to-back wins in Boise, and Boise State wins it, another series that goes to 7 in the opening round. And then Oregon and Texas. They've played 6 times in their history. The Ducks had the win in the Alamo Bowl in 2013, a win in the Holiday Bowl in 2000, but the previous 4 matchups all go to the Texas Longhorns, giving the Longhorns a 4-2 series win, setting up the Western Conference semifinals. In the Eastern Conference semifinals, it's Clemson versus Alabama. They've played in some monstrous matchups. Clemson with the 2 national title game wins. Bama with the 1 national title game win and the Sugar Bowl win over Clemson. It's 2-2. You got to go back to 2008 and then 1975 for the 2 last matchups. Bama won both of them, giving them the series win 4-2 over Clemson. LSU versus Ohio State gets tricky. They're 1-1 with one tie all time. The win for Ohio State was in Ohio. The win for LSU was in Louisiana. The game where they tied was in Louisiana. And for that reason, I'm going to give Ohio State the series win. They went on the road and managed to pull out a tie. LSU can't get that win at home. It's going to make them pay. And to the Western Conference semifinals, we have Oklahoma versus Iowa. Oklahoma and Iowa have only played twice in their school's history. Oklahoma winning both games, emphatically beating Iowa. They just decided to not even play. Most recently was 2011 in the Insight Bowl. And then it takes us to Boise State versus Texas, where they have never played in their school's history. So I decided, you know what, let's just take it to a simulator. Simulate the game. Texas wins 37-3. So sorry, Boise State. They fall to the Longhorns and Texas advances. So the conference finals are set in the West, Oklahoma versus Texas, and in the East, it's Alabama versus Ohio State. So it's time for the Red River rivalry, Oklahoma versus Texas. Oklahoma winning last year's to take a 1-0 series lead, but in 2022, Texas with the dominant 49-0 lead, and then it's all Sooners after that with the wins in 2021, 2020, 2019, a gentleman's sweep. They send their bitter rivals home and advance to the NBA college football finals. The next matchup, Ohio State versus Alabama. They had the iconic game in the semifinals in 2015 that gives Ohio State a 1-0 lead. But, don't forget about that 2020 national title. It's 1-1. They only played 3 games outside of that, and it was all tied. The Sugar Bowl, the Citrus Bowl, and another game in East Rutherford, New Jersey in 1986. Bama with a gentleman's sweep of their own, setting up the college football NBA finals between Alabama and Oklahoma. A behemoth of a matchup, West versus East. Alabama the 1 seed, Oklahoma the 1 seed. It just makes sense. Looking at the recent matchups, you had 2018 where Bama got the best of Jalen Hurts in Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl in the playoffs. But it was in 2014, the iconic Oklahoma beatdown of Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. You got to go prior to that. 2003 in Tuscaloosa, Oklahoma gets the win. They also get the win in 2002. They tie in Houston, Texas in 1970. And the only other matchup was a 17-0 win for Bama in 63 in the Orange Bowl. Meaning Oklahoma wins the series 3-2 with a tie. If you want to count that as the 4th win for Oklahoma and 3rd win for Alabama, be my guest, meaning Oklahoma are your college football NBA champions. The ball is in your court, Oklahoma City Thunder. Can Oklahoma become the state where the NBA champions come out for both college football and the NBA? You can take away whatever you want from this. I'm not sure what to do with this information, but Oklahoma is your college football NBA champions.